Hi everybody. It's very nice to see you, and it's very nice to come to Biggar, to my hometown. I went to see my dad before I came here. That was a very nice thing. And I drove past the fire hall. You know where the library used to be in Biggar? When I was a girl? It was beside the fire hall. It was, and you could go in the door, and you could go to the left into the fire hall, or you could go to the right into the library. Did you used to go there, Daryl? Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very cool. And one time and the library was open, I think, Thursday evenings and Saturday afternoons. And one time I went there with my sisters, and I was really interested in reading Nancy Drew mysteries. Actually, you too. I was a big fan. And anyway, so we sort of spent quite a while there, and then we're leaving there, and as we're walking out, you know how sometimes you just feel compelled to try a door? See if the door is locked. It's usually locked, right? So I try the door to the fire hall. It's not locked. But it's kind of a little dark in there, but not completely dark. Nobody's in there. The fire truck is in there. Oh, really want to go in there, but I think, oh, we could be in a lot of trouble coming in here. But wanted to explore because it looked so cool. So I had this great idea. If we cleaned the fire hall, and it was a mess, let me tell you, it was a mess. I thought if we clean the fire hall, then we'll get to explore and we won't get in any trouble. So we did. We went in there, we swept all the floors. There was junk all over the place. We dusted, we climbed up ladders, we went in the fire truck, dusted everything up. There was a back room in there where, I don't know, people must have played cards back there. There were chairs and popcorn around and pop bottles and stuff. Other stuff too. We cleaned all that up. We spent, a long time in the fire hall looking at everything, and then we basically just left, went home, never told a soul. Isn't that an amazing thing? Let me tell you something. When I go to a big city, like I go to Vancouver or Toronto, one of those big cities, and I say, how many people like to ride horses? Lots of people like to ride horses. How many people get to ride horses? Hardly anyone. Hardly anyone. It costs a fortune if you live in a big city. Just a few people get to. But when you live here, you probably, even if you don't have your own horse, you know people that have a horse, right? How cool is that? You're very fortunate to live here. What's that?
I know who has a horse.
Oh, you do. You know people that do. Okay, and how many people, do you study French in school here?
No.
No. Anybody speaks French?
Kind of.
Kind of. Kind of you do. Oh, so did you take French in your school sometime? What school did you go to?
It's not raining yet.
Oh, really? I've been there. Okay, so the reason I asked that is because this story has a few French words. And if you're wondering about those words, you'll probably figure it out in the story. But if at the end you're still wondering, just put up your hand and we'll talk about it. Okay? Okay. It is a long time since the Lutin was last seen in Canada. Now some people say that is because horses have been replaced. Like with cars and trucks and tractors. But there are still all kinds of horses in the countryside, right? Other people say it is all because of Toto LeBlanc. That could be. See, Toto LeBlanc had the fastest horse in Beauce. His Rosamay won every race. On Saturdays, people from all around would bring their best horse to the races. And the prize, there was always a prize. The prize was usually a sack of flour or a sack of potatoes. I see you're not very impressed with that prize. I suppose if you woke up on Christmas morning and your stocking was stuffed with potatoes, you might think you've been bad, right? Yeah. But you know what? In those days, it was a very valuable prize. People said it was too bad that Toto LeBlanc was a boy, because if he was a full-grown man, he could have supported a wife and 20 children. That's how they would say it. A wife and 20 children with all the potatoes and flour he won at the races. Toto LeBlanc loved his horse. He loved his Rosamond so much that he moved down out of the nice big comfortable farmhouse on the hill where he lived with his folks to the miserable little room over top of the stable, just so he could keep an eye on her. Well, one morning, he came down the ladder to feed Rosamond her oats, and he found her leaning her head on the manger, as if she couldn't hold it up. Her black coat was covered with white froth. Her mane and tail were all tangled up. He checked each one of her hooves, and a shoe was missing. Just like I thought, he said, someone's been riding you. Well, he rubbed her down, and he combed out her mane and her tail, and he fed her some oats. And then he took her into town to the blacksmith shop. You know the blacksmith?
Yeah.
Why would he take her to the blacksmith? For a new shoe, that's right. Now, the blacksmith was busy at his forge. You know what the forge is? It's the place where he heats up the metal. That's where he was busy. In the blacksmith shop were all the men from town who had nothing better to do but hang around the blacksmith shop, chew pigtail tobacco, and gossip. They gathered around Toto and his horse. They looked at Rosamond's coat that was still just a little bit damp. They looked at where the shoe was missing. And they looked at her mane that was all tangled up. And one of them said, "It's the lieutenant's been riding her." The other one said, "That's right, and those tangles won't come out of her mane till the next time it rains." "Well, what kind of a story is that?" said Toto. "Someone in my neighborhood has been riding my horse, and I am going to find out who it is." So that night, when he went home, he set a trap. He got a rope, a thin, strong rope. He tied one end of it to the inside door handle of the stable door, and then he ran that rope all the way down the middle of the stable, up the ladder, and he put it beside his bed. When he went to bed that night, he tied the other end of the rope to his big toe. I know. Now then, he said, oh, and he put his gun on his pillow beside his head. He said, now, when that guy opens the door, it's going to pull on the rope, which is going to pull on my toe, which is going to wake me up. And then you, he said to his gun, will have something to do.
Now he has one. What kind of gun was it?
Good question. That night, Toto LeBlanc slept as soundly as an old shoe. When he woke up, it was morning. The rope was still there. His gun was still there. His toe was still there. Thank goodness. And Rosamond was still there because he could hear her snuffling down below. So he untied the rope and he climbed down the ladder. And there he found Rosamond. Well, first of all, the first thing he found was the rope in the middle of the stable, cut. Then he found Rosamond in her stall, on her knees, completely covered all over with mud, more tangled up than before. Toto LeBlanc was mad like two wolves, and he vowed that that night he would catch the rascal no matter what. And he kept his vow.
Dig a deep hole, and then he'll fall.
That night,
Then he'll fall.
you think?
And then cover it, and then he'll just
Nathan.
step on
Oh,
Nathan,
that would
let
have
her
been a
tell the
good
story.
idea. That would have been a good idea. Here's what he did. He lay down with his ear to a crack right above Rosamay's head. Remember, he was in the room above. And he blew out the lantern so the rascal would think he was asleep. And he was just going to make sure that he woke up, or that he didn't go to sleep. Round about midnight, he heard a big commotion down below. Heard the stable door opening, heard Rosamay kicking at her stall. He jumped up and he grabbed the lantern, but he couldn't find the matches. By the time he got the lantern in, Rosamay was already galloping out of the yard. Only thing he could do is run over to the window, open it up, hold the lantern out, and look. And there, on the back of his horse, was a creature like he never imagined existed. It was completely covered all over with long, shaggy, matted hair. It had the horns of a bull. It had the face of an ape. It had great, long claws tangled up in the mane of his horse. And as Toto stood there, frozen in the window with the lantern, the creature turned around and waved to him and called out, "Since you're awake, I'll be back in an hour for a game of cards. Ha ha ha!" Toto, the blood just about fell out the window. He pulled himself in, he slammed the window shut, he ran to the door, he locked the door, and then he proceeded to pile all the sacks of potatoes and all the sacks of flour against the door. And then he sat down to wait. It seemed like hours before he heard Rosamay backing in, running back into the yard to answer your question. And then he heard the stable door opening. And he heard Rosamay backing into her stall. And then he heard a thumping sound coming up the ladder. And then he heard blam, blam, blam on the door. "Go away," said Toto. "Fine, I'll go away, and I'll take your horse with me, and you will never see her again." Ha! Toto LeBlanc was not a particularly brave boy, but he loved his horse. And so he took his heart in his two hands, as they say, of brave people. And he moved the sacks of potatoes and the sacks of flour, unlocked the door, and opened it. The lieutenant bowed low under the door jamb and strode into the room just like he knew the place. "I've seen better stables than this," he said. He walked over to the table and he sat down in the only chair. "So where's the cards?" Toto went into the kitchen. He got an old, worn-out deck of cards from the drawer, carried it over to the table, pulled up a sack of potatoes, and sat down across from the lieutenant. "So, should we play Crazy Eight?" "Blah, game for cowherds. We will play slapjacks. And I'll deal, 'cause I don't trust you." And the lieutenant took the cards in his long, long claws, and he began to shuffle, and then to deal. One to himself, one to Toto. One to himself, one to Toto. When the cards were all dealt out, he looked at his hand and he played a card. Toto LeBlanc looked at his hand, and he played a card. Then the lieutenant sat up in his chair and looked over the table right into Toto LeBlanc's hand. "You've got jacks. Why don't you play your jacks?" "I don't think that's very fair," said Toto. But he took his card back all the same. Played his jack, began to tap it, and to say slapjacks, when the lieutenant's big paw came down on his hand and said, "Slapjacks, my trick!" You don't have very good manners either, do you?" "Speaking of manners, what kind of a host are you? What about the snacks for the card game? You know, the cookies and the tea, the little sandwiches." "Well," said Toto, "I wasn't expecting to have a card game. Only thing I've got is this cold potato potato pie left over from supper. I make it every day to try and use up all the potatoes and the flour around here. And he got up, he went into the kitchen. And he took down from the cupboard this cold, soggy, it was actually kind of a disgusting looking potato pie. And as he was doing that, he glanced up into a little tin mirror that was hanging on the cupboard door, and he saw his own pretty frightened face. And then he seemed to get an idea, and he lightened up just a little bit. Took 3 plates down from the cupboard, cut 3 pieces of pie, carried them over to the table. The lieutenant saw that. He said, 3? Why 3? By the looks of that mess, I'll be doing good to choke down 1. Oh, said Toto, I'm expecting a guest. The lieutenant was interested. Does he have a horse? Well, he should have a horse. They say that he is the finest rider in all this land. Well, what's his name? Well, I don't know his proper name. But I might have a photograph of him in the kitchen. He got up and he went into the kitchen. And he took that little tin mirror down from the cupboard door. And he carried it over and he placed it in the claws of the lieutenant. And the lieutenant looked into that mirror. And then all of a sudden, wah! He jumped straight up in the air. The mirror went flying, the table went flying. He was so upset he ran over, jumped out the window without opening it. Toto was amazed. He ran over to the window, and there was the lieutenant running across the yard. And as he was running, he was yelling, "But I don't want to meet your friend. Your friend's a horrible monster." Toto was delighted, but he wasn't taking any chances. He took that little tin mirror, and you know what he did with it? He nailed it to the outside of the stable door. And the next time it rained, the tangles finally fell out of Rosa May's mane. Now that was the last time that Toto LeBlanc saw the lieutenant, and it may have been the very last time the lieutenant was ever seen in all of Canada. And that's the story. You did so well. That's a story I tell in high school, you know that. Give yourself a big hand. Good job. But said I better get out of here, 'cause you see me on my trail. Trail up, trail up. I said I better get out of here, 'cause you see me on my trail. Now when the fox heard that horn, he knew he was in big trouble. He started to run, fast as he could go through the town. He was running through the back alley. He was jumping over fences. He was jumping over garbage cans. He was saying somebody's name. What's your name? Angelica. He even ran right through Angelica's house in the back door and out the front. And after a while, way back behind him, he could hear the people of the town coming after him, and they sounded like this. Are there any dogs in Bigger at all?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
there are.
I do at my house. Me too.
I don't imagine they bark, though. Do they bark? Okay. So on the count of 3, I want you to bark like the dog you know the best. And you need to listen to these instructions. And the banjo will tell you when to stop barking, okay? So you'll be barking and listening. That's a tricky thing to do, but I know you can do it, okay? 1, 2, 3, go. Learning to play the spoons is kind of like learning to eat with chopsticks. Except you don't get food at the end of it. Necessarily. So it's it's about learning how to hold them. It's like learning to knit as well. It's about learning how to hold them. And the way I hold them is I put one finger in, wrap my others, and put my thumb over top. And then, just like any instrument, it's practice. Other thing is some spoons work better than others. Some spoons will fit in your hands better than others. So you might have to go through your whole silverware drawer till you find the spoons that are your instrument. And then you're just going to practice. Put some music on. See, they were working a minute ago. And just start playing those rhythms. Yeah, see, so I'll tell you one more thing. Anybody have those metal mixing bowls at home? You know those ones? Maybe your mom makes potato salad in there, bread. You know those ones? Well, you can take a bowl like that with you into the bathtub. I know we're talking bare naked here. Into the bathtub with a spoon. Put a little bit of water in there and tap it with a spoon, and it will make the most surprising music, kind of like whale music. So when you go home, you tell your mom that from now on you will be having a bath with the mixing bowls. The storyteller said so.